Hello and welcome to this week's bonus episode of Planet Critical, a podcast for a world in crisis. You're going to have to excuse the lighting this week. It's a dreich day in Scotland. On this week's episode, I interviewed Yi Tao, a physicist and engineer who's tackling the problem of climate change with geoengineering. Now, before anybody screams and shouts about geoengineering and how it's just an excuse to continue business as usual, we cover that on the show. Yi talks about lots of projects that are a really good example of how geoengineering can be really, really negative. He discusses the research that they still have to do with his proposal and what has been done already to show, they're really trying to cover all their bases. And most importantly, he goes into great detail about how the economic system needs to be changed. We need to do what he calls social engineering in order to be better equipped to tackle the climate crisis, which does stem from a society of overconsumption, et cetera, et cetera. So he really knows where he's coming from, not just from a scientific perspective, but also from an economic and from a sociological perspective. Now, the solution that Yi proposes is covering 10% of the world's croplands in mirrors. The project's called Mirrors, and I would highly suggest that you go and listen to the episode if you haven't already to get all of the data and numbers and the stuff that I can't repeat because I'm just not wired that way, about how effective this project could be. But he says from the modeling that they've done, they could stabilize the planet's climate by covering 10% of cropland with these mirrors. Why are mirrors a good idea, he says? Well, they're durable, they're cost effective, they're fully recyclable. It still sounds pretty dystopian, having so much land mass covered in mirrors. I was very happy to hear that it's only cropland rather than, the natural world, although he does also explain how it can be used to combat coral bleaching in the sea, which is really, really interesting. Now, one thing that I quickly asked was, have they studied the impact on local ecosystems when implementing these mirrors? And he said, not quite yet. So as promising as the project sounds and as interesting as it sounds, obviously the data still has to come back on that before this project can be rolled out on a large scale. So that is what they're prioritizing at the moment. This was kind of a tricky episode for me, to be completely honest, because it wasn't so much a discussion of concept as opposed to real data. And I am not a scientist. I have a degree in philosophy. So as much as I loved learning about this, it was impossible for me to challenge Yi really on anything that he was saying. And thus very important for me to hear his parole about ecology, about consumerism, about Western society. Like, one of the things I really loved most about the project, the dystopian project, was the fact that they have kept everything, all of their research, open source. Funders have walked away because they're not willing to create a solution that people can capitalize on and make a profit from. So right now, the team of 30 to 40 researchers are mostly volunteering their own time, even volunteering their own money. That's how much they believe in this project. It certainly gives me hope for this project, that the ideology driving this is also about restructuring the conditions that have essentially engendered the climate crisis and the economic crisis that we find ourselves in. It actually makes me think of the episode with Dan Fiskus, in which he spoke about Rome science, reductionist, objectivist, analytical, mechanistic, and how we need to reimagine the paradigm of science so that we can infuse the field itself with a sense of values and ethics in order to better prioritize what needs to be researched and how. And Dan and I didn't really touch on this during our episode, but speaking with Yi, what it made me think of is not just how we choose what we're going to study, not just how we prioritize what needs to be studied, but then how we also study it. So the fact that it's open source, the fact that they've turned money away in order to not allow people to capitalize on it. And also the fact that Yi said he committed career suicide by walking away from a really, really big, important project at Harvard University and transitioning his research onto climate change, which he says not enough academics are doing. So it seems to be this confluence of infusing science with ethics, i.e., scientists and the field itself being committed to figuring out the problems of how to make life better on this planet for all living beings, but also the methods that you choose to do that with. Like, I'm a firm a purist believer that you cannot pick and choose the bits of a system that suit you while you're trying to combat the bigger picture. It's why, for example, I will never monetize on YouTube, because I think advertising is, a huge part of the problem of overconsumption. For anyone watching this and seeing ads on YouTube, it's YouTube. I don't get any money from it. I'm essentially waiting to get autonomy over the ads that are on my YouTube channel, and I will then be switching them off. That's an example of a kind of purist position. And it's very, very easy for me with such a small thing. And I think it was very, very interesting that Yi and his colleagues have also chosen that sort of purist track. They're trying to combat the heat from the sun, like the thermal issue, and they cannot use other systems that are currently in place. They cannot abuse current systems in place in order to just solve that issue. It has to constantly be big picture thinking. And I even asked him, do you think it would be beneficial to compromise slightly on that and to take some short-term funding and to maybe allow a capitalist to make profits of this in order to roll out this solution quite quickly? And he said, well, no. There are parts of it that can be made profitable that don't impact the project in any way. But, he said it's all open source now anyway. Nobody can make money off it. We've put all of the information out there. I think it's a wonderful position for researchers to take. I think if every researcher around the world tomorrow decided that they wanted their scientific method to be ethical, I mean, that would force the system of academia to change rapidly. It would maybe even decouple research from money. I don't know. But I found that the how of the scientific method and the way that this team is approaching their project as exciting as the project itself, which, again, he goes into great detail about with all the figures and the numbers and how it could really, really help the planet, even though, again, the idea of having mirrors over so much land is quite a scary thought. I want to know what you think about the values of the scientific method. So leave a comment, join in the discussion, create a debate. I'll see it. I'll respond. Also, do let me know what you think of these podcast episodes. You can leave a comment and you can also suggest somebody for me to interview or a topic that I haven't yet covered on the show or one that you want me to cover in more depth. If you're new to this page, you can find out more about the project either here on this YouTube channel or over at planetcritical.com. You can subscribe there or on the channel. And I would ask, if you are a long-time listener enjoying another episode of Planet Critical, please do consider supporting the podcast on the Patreon page. All of the links are in the description box below. To everyone who is supporting Planet Critical, thank you very, very much. You make me feel like we're all doing it together. It's a real joy to invest so much of my week in this project. So thank you for making it possible. All of you, thank you for watching. I hope this was valuable to you in some way, and I will see you next week.